Good morning, everybody. I'm glad everybody can make it here. It looks like we have about 150 people on right now. We usually get more on there. We had like 300 views of the last video we did. So if you don't know what we are, we're Unite. Unite brings the DOE in to give us all the wonderful news of what the upcoming stuff is going to be, so we can be prepared for it. The Just so you know who I am, I'm Matthew Snowberger. I'm president of Unite, and I work for Lewis Cass Schools, and we're just doing a live stream here. Thank you for the two people that are clapping there. Thanks. But we're here all to a real reason to be here talking is about DOE and state reporting. Oh, come on, guys. You guys can't hear that on the DOE side, but there's booing going on in the background. But we have the team from the DOE here, and I'm sure you guys will love hearing from the DOE. That's what I thought. We're going to start off with Michelle, and she's going to start the whole process over, and she's going to talk about what we're going to talk about today. So, all right, Michelle.
Okay. All right. Good morning, guys. It's a new world out there. You know, we have to do all this virtually, so I miss seeing everybody. Let me move this over. So today we have a lot of information to share. We have a lot of people with us today. We have Melissa Ambray, Director of School Finance, is going to be presenting. Karen Davies is an assessment specialist. She will be presenting. Dr. Jennifer Jensen is with the curriculum teaching and learning. She will be presenting. Brandon Myers from Special Ed. Everyone knows Brandon. He'll be presenting. And I also have Brenda Ertz from School Accountability in case there are some questions. And we have Sarah Hunter from KSM Consulting. And I believe Debbie Daly is going to be joining us as well in case there's any questions needed to be answered from them. So let's go ahead and get started. Matt, if you want to go ahead, and I can't see where you're advancing.
Yeah, you're good. You just tell me where we're going, and I'll follow along with the slides.
I see it. Got it.
It's going to be slightly behind, so you just need to just do your normal presentation. We'll follow with you.
Matt, if you want to go ahead, and I can't see.
Yeah, you're going to have to mute the, if you're watching the presentation, you're going to have to not watch the presentation at the same time. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit behind, so we're hearing ourselves.
This is going to be fun.
Welcome to technology. All right. Yeah, so just keep talking about what you're talking about. I'll follow along with you.
It's been a really long month. It's been a really... All right, so first thing we want to talk about is some, we're going to talk about data exchange and a few updates for you guys. So there is some data exchange resources. If you have not been paying attention and out looking at these resources, you want to check out the webpage, the doe.in.gov/link/data exchange. And we have all of the information out here as to what the data exchange initiative and project is. There's information for the developers and for the schools. All right, so we have resource updates for the schools. If you click underneath the school data exchange for schools gears, you will see some new updated information for the schools and the reporting for the 2020-2021 school year. We have an update on the data exchange vendor certification status. We have been meeting and reaching out to every SIS vendor that has been identified as supporting an Indiana school, whether it's public or non-public. So we've been very busy trying to make sure that every SIS vendor is aware of the data exchange project. We're working with them to help them if they want to become Indiana certified, getting on board. So we've been putting in a lot of time with the vendors, trying to make sure everyone has an opportunity to become Indiana certified. And as some of you have been reaching out, other personnel, the non-certified employee submission, that will not happen through DOE Online. We've been stating this for a long time. The submission window is going to open October 1st and it will close October 30th. So you will have 30 days to submit your data through Data Exchange. The certification of the data will happen on November 2nd. And just as a reminder, both the LEA administrator and the finance administrator with certification roles will need to log into the data exchange and they will need to certify the data. That is the completion sign off to say you're good with the total numbers that you are going to provide to us this year. And schools should be planning on using the formatted template. We are not expecting any of this data to come directly from an SIS. Currently, it could not come directly from an SIS, even if you do house it. We do not have any schools or vendors connected. We don't have any vendors that are Indiana certified, and we don't have any schools that have been connected to the state through Data Exchange API. So everyone will need to use the template. So, just a moment. One of the big changes, the other personnel headcounts. In the past, I've discovered that you guys were reporting people as partial, and that is not going to be the case this year. So everyone is a whole person, even if they're working in more than one area. So other personnel headcounts, they should be counted as a whole person. You are not to report any of those personnel counts as a decimal. The fractions of each employee will be captured and reported in the full-time equivalency field. So as an example, Mary is hired to work as an instructional aide in grade 2 for half the day and also a library aide for the other half of the day. So Mary's going to be counted as a whole person in the instructional aide column, and she's going to be counted as a whole person in the library aide column. In the FTE, that's where you will show the 0.5 and the 0.5, because she works half-time as an instructional aide, half-time as a library aide. Another example, Mary's hired to work part-time in the cafeteria. She works half days, 5 days a week. She will be counted as 1 in the all other food service employee count, so 1 person, but in the FTE, again, she would be reported as a 0.5 because she works half-time every day. So that is a change, and I want to make sure everyone is aware of that change. Moodle. We now have a Moodle community. It is called the Data Exchange Training. And you will want to make sure you go out and you check out the Data Exchange and look at the courses that we have available. Everything will be available on Friday. If it isn't all out there today, but everything will be available on Friday. There is going to be training recorded and available Friday for the submission of the NE, how to locate those templates, how to fill it out, and how to submit it into Data Exchange. So we're strongly encouraging everyone to start looking at those Moodle courses. We have a course that will be posted on Friday that gives a validation portal overview, how to navigate through the system, how to complete the sign-off. So you want to have your LEA administrator and your finance administrator also watching this, because it tells them how to complete that certification process. We have a course on security access and roles. So how to set the security access and roles, where to find help and resources. So we are building this up, and we're excited about getting everything posted out there for you guys. Another new piece, this is available right now. You can go check it out. The Data Exchange Knowledge Hub. So this is going to be our new web page. So like we have currently for the STN Application Center, we have a new Knowledge Hub that is for data exchange. And like I said, it is available. You can locate it using the URL that's posted on this slide. You can locate it by logging into the DOE homepage and going under programs, and you can find it underneath the IT department. So on this page, you're going to be able to locate, and through the trainings, this will help you navigate the Knowledge Hub as well. You will be able to locate the other personnel, the NE reporting guidance document. So everything is located on this Knowledge Hub. As we continue to add like the attendance, the calendar, everything that you're going to need for data exchange is going to be located on this Knowledge Hub. Who's going to be required to report, why the data is required to be reported. You'll find an online version. So if you don't want to print off the layouts, you'll find the online version of the reporting guidance, and all of the templates will be located on this site as well. So I'm sure everyone will be out there clicking around, curious, ready to check it out. So the data exchange implementation update, like I said, the other personnel is going to open and be ready on October 1st. Your data exchange tile icon, the app in the link portal, will not be available to you until October 1st. So if you are still not seeing that icon, please don't worry. It will be available to you on October 1st. If you don't have it after October 1st and you feel you should have it, make sure you're working with your security coordinator. If you are the security coordinator and you don't have that tile, reach out to us. The next certification date is going to happen in July. So the goal is to have everyone connected after the first of the year. So January, February, sometime after the first of the year, maybe March, have your data start flowing directly through the API from your SIS system. We need to have all of the attendance and calendar information submitted to us by June 30th. So you have until June 30th to give us all of this data, because on July 1, that's when it goes into certification mode. So no data will be accepted after July 1. And we will have more training videos and information coming out regarding this. If you haven't been hearing anything from your SIS vendors on where they are in the process, I suggest that you reach out to them, make sure where they are, what their intent is, and if they're on track to be able to have this information coming through the state after the start of the year, the calendar year. We have a data exchange kickoff Webex coming up. This was posted out in Dr. McCormick's Friday newsletter last week. I hope everyone saw it. If you didn't, make sure that you maybe go and locate that newsletter. You can find them on the DOE homepage, but we are doing a kickoff, excuse me. It'll be September 29th from 11 to 12, and there is registration required. And I believe Sarah might post that out in the live chat area. So if you have questions about data exchange, you can email dataexchange@doe.in.gov. If you need FAQ, again, check out the data exchange webpage. Now you have the Knowledge Hub as well, where you can find information about the NE reporting. So we do have those areas for you. Also, the Help, our support ticketing system, the Help has data exchange added to it as well. The Help tickets are really for if you're having a question on, just like STN Center, a question on an error message, how to report something, you want to put those through the Help Desk. If you have a question on a process with data exchange, you can email the data exchange account. All right, I felt that I would go over the attendance codes one more time, just in case there is still some concern and questions. We are still getting concerns and questions on when to use COVID, virtual due to COVID, and not using virtual due to COVID. So, virtual, a student is physically not present within a brick and mortar building. And it's not related to a COVID-19 reason. Student is sick, they've got a cold, it's not COVID, they enjoy a virtual environment, it's not COVID related. If they are learning at home, you want to report them as virtual on the attendance code. If they are learning at home for any COVID reason, school is shut down, they've been exposed, they're quarantined, the family has been exposed and is quarantined, the family is not comfortable and wants their child at home because of COVID, they're on a hybrid schedule, they're on a blended schedule, any COVID reason, if they are logged on, engaged, and in learning virtually, you want to use that virtual due to COVID-19. We have an attendance decision flowchart that was put together, and you can find it out on the data reporting webpage as a resource with the 2020-2021 attendance reporting. And we will get that moved over to the Knowledge Hub as well. I've tried to give some examples. So if a school is shut down and the student is out for 5 days straight, but they're engaged online learning, you're going to use that virtual due to COVID-19. If they're only out 3 days a week, then you'll give us the virtual due to COVID 3 days a week. The other 2 days, if they're in the building, then you'll report in attendance. And I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions. Matt, do you have any?
No, I'm not seeing any, and I don't see any in chat either. There's none coming in through there, so I think you're good.
Okay, great. If there are questions, you can post them. We'll come back around to them. But that is my portion for today. So I am going to turn this over to Karen Davies. She is, as I said, she is an assessment specialist, and she's going to provide some accommodation updates for you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Karen.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. You're going to put our slide. Is the slide up?
Yeah, it's up. So yeah, as long as you follow along, I'll follow along with you. Yep.
All right, great, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Davies, and I am the accessibility specialist working in the Office of Assessment. So I'm here. There's been a lot of changes recently, and so I'm here to kind of talk you through all of that so you have a better understanding of what's been going on. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Yeah, there'll be a delay. There'll be about a 30-second delay. So you just need to keep talking
Okay.
as you do it,
I
and
can do
then
that.
I'll just follow right along with you. Yep, just like I did with Michelle. Yep, you'll be good.
All right, that's fine. IDOE recently updated or recently conducted an accommodations webinar that included special education directors, special education teachers, and corporation test coordinators. We just had this last week, and we have another one that will be coming up on September 28th. This webinar was to review new legislation, new accommodations, as well as there was a scenarios document that IDOE recently published and put on the website. And this document is so that case conference committees are well informed as they are making decisions based on the accommodations that they select for students. And so we will share that with you in a little bit. These updates are available in the IIEP, ILP, as well as the DOE TA. And you can go on to the next slide. As I was talking, I discussed that IDOE created a test scenarios document. This is basically to assist schools as they're making decisions on appropriate accommodations that will be available to students. This document, basically what it does is it shows the schools the type of test form a student will receive based on the accommodation that is selected. So for example, if a student is going to have the text-to-speech read aloud to them, except reading comprehension, the student will continue to take a computer adaptive test like they have historically for iLearn. However, with the new legislation, we have the students can have text-to-speech for all items, including reading comprehension for English language arts, and that is available for students in grades 6 through 12. If a student has that accommodation of text-to-speech, including all items for reading comprehension, those students will be given an accommodated fixed form. What that is that the student will take the online test because they will have text-to-speech read aloud to them, but the type of test form that they will receive is a fixed form assessment instead of taking the CAT. So that scenarios document that you can see in the testing scenarios box there, that when you click on that link, that is available on the IDOE website, and that will assist schools in making those decisions with what type of accommodation that they're going to select so that they have an understanding of the type of test form the student is going to receive. So we can go on to the next slide. The DOE IR opened on September 1st for submissions. Good cause exemptions still may be granted by the school, by case conference committees, or individual learning plan teams. Students that are currently enrolled in grade 4 that did not participate in the spring IREAD 3 assessment due to the cancellation of COVID-19, they do not need to retest during any of the 2020, 2021 testing windows. There is the fall IREAD optional assessment. If a school does choose to have their current 4th grade students take that, they do not need to submit a good cause exemption if the student doesn't pass. However, the spring IREAD 3 assessment is required for students that are currently enrolled in grade 3, as well as students that would need to retest for grade 5. So good cause exemptions may be granted following the receipt of the spring 2021 iRead results for grades 3 and 5. And so I guess we can stop if anybody has any questions. I'm not seeing anything. Okay.
Hi. Oh, okay. Are we good? Okay, great. I'm Jennifer Jensen. I'm the director for teaching and learning, and I'm a bit new to this group, and I was not sure exactly what you might want to hear. So I wanted to share a couple things with you, and I do hope that this just at least lets you know who is over this area so that you can reach out with other questions that you may have. So one thing is just sort of a reminder that we did have new course codes for middle school. I'm sure you guys have probably already figured that all out, but we have gotten a few questions about certain things. And so don't hesitate to reach out if you do have questions about that. Remember that what we've done is made them a little bit more meaningful by making sure that they include the grade level or grade band. So rather than having one generic code for all of math in K-8, we can now tell if a student is in second grade math or third grade math, that type of thing. So just remember that your systems need to accommodate 7 symbols now. Also, one of the biggest questions that we get in my team is, do you have your standards in another format other than the PDFs that we have on there? The current answer is no. But what people are wanting, and I do believe that is, to be able to export it into your SIS or LMS system, right? Especially if you're doing a competency-based grading. So what I want to tell you is that this is coming soon. We are working with a vendor right now to get our standards uploaded and formatted in a way that will be meaningful to both an SIS system and then to teachers as well. So we are really excited about that. I've been telling people no for well over a year that we don't have this, but it will be coming soon. Hopefully by December is when our vendor says this will be complete. So don't hesitate to reach out for updates, but we will obviously announce it in Dr. McCormick's weekly update as soon as it's available. So, and then the last thing I had to bring up was just really talking about just updating the e-transcript. I am in communication on a regular basis with the Commission for Higher Ed, and it's through a collaboration with them that they are wanting these e-transcripts. And one of the things that we just wanted to remind you of is that we're still having a lot of trouble with compliance in terms of schools. Probably less than 50% are actually submitting this data in the XML format that the schools really want it in. So reminder that a PDF, or sending an electronic version of the PDF, is not the same thing as an e-transcript, right? And this may need to be some communication with your counseling department. They are the ones that likely need to know how to do this, but they often maybe don't have all of the IT knowledge behind what needs to happen. So let us know who we can help support and who we can contact. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I also have some contacts up there in terms of Michelle Clark as our counseling specialist, and then Terry Lambert is our contact with CHE, who is in charge of the e-transcript portion. So if you are questions, we know that Naviance was causing a problem for a lot of schools with this, but they have fixed that problem. So we are just want to encourage you to revisit that with your counseling teams and figure out how we can continue to move towards that common transcript. And then the last slide I have up there is all of the contacts for the teaching and learning team. So even if you don't feel like you need them, if you need to share these with anybody in your team at all, you have everybody's titles and contact information. And I guess I didn't share this at the beginning, but the teaching and learning team now does include all of digital learning and all of those aspects. So If there are questions, don't hesitate to send them our way. Thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, there does seem to be a question. And I think it's from before. So it says grade 4 testing is optional, or can we print it out of the morning so it's up to date? Hopefully that makes sense to you guys.
I think that's a question for Karen.
I think it is too. I think it's just because there's a delay. So.
What was the question? Were they asking if the grade 4 test is optional?
Yes, they're saying it's grade 4 testing optional.
Yes. Yeah. For I read 3, grade 4, the grade 4 test is optional if you want to take the fall test.
Okay, and then there's another one. It says if a student has surgery not due to COVID, but is homebound due to surgery and takes advantage of virtual so he does not get behind, is that considered a virtual absence or a COVID absence? We have never offered virtual before this year, so we are counting all virtual absences as COVID. Is that correct?
What was the first part of the question?
If a student has surgery not due to COVID, but is homebound due to surgery and takes advantage of virtual so he does not get behind, is that considered a virtual absence or COVID absence?
Virtual. That is a virtual absence because the student is learning virtually not due to a COVID reason.
There's a question in chat. Is there a year for XML compliance? Older transcripts are hard to convert or may not be in our SIS.
Great question. I would just say make every effort to make your current transcripts XML. I think that's our biggest problem right now, is that not even the ones like for current students are going through XML. So I would worry less about older ones. I don't have a specific year. That would probably be a question for Terry Lambert, but I guess I would just encourage us to make sure we're trying to do that with our current students.
I don't see any more questions on this topic, so. Oh, here we go. SPED. Sorry, we got another one coming in. SPED teacher, multiple grade levels. Let's make sure we get it correct. SPED teachers teach multiple grade levels. So those teachers that teach 4 through 5 grade levels will need 4 through 5 math classes, 4 through 5 reading, 4 through 5 science, etc. Is this correct?
Referring to IEP accommodations, yes, that is correct.
I believe that's what it's referring to, yes.
Yes, in the IEP system, you would be selecting, if you have a current 4th grader, you would be selecting current 4th grade daily accommodations that map to the state accommodations. And then that also would be for 5th grade because the case conference is always within 1 year. And depending on when the case conference is going to be, you might have to update it prior to testing.
Okay, I don't think I see any more questions coming in. I think we can move to the next presenter.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Melissa Ambray.
Before we move on, sorry. It says, can we still grant good cause exemptions for students currently in grade 5?
Yes, that is correct. You can do good cause exemptions for students that are in grade 5.
Sorry about that. All right.
It's okay.
All right, we're ready to move on.
Okay. Good morning again. This is Melissa Ambray, Director of the Office of School Finance. And today I'm going to talk about membership, which has been quite the hot topic this summer, as well as curricular materials. So obviously I've divided this into 2 sections. And in looking at the slide set, I see I'm the slide winner of the day because I have the most. So sit back and let's go on and talk about membership. So keeping in mind when we talk about membership, we're looking at a count of students and enrolled and expected to be in attendance on count date. These are statutory definitions for enrolled and attending. So when we receive questions in the Office of School Finance on whether or not students are to be counted if they enrolled one day, expected to attend a week later, the answer in those situations is no, because we're always looking at who's enrolled and expected to be in attendance on count day. The fall count date was last Friday, September 18. So that's the date we're looking at what students were enrolled and expected to be in attendance at your school. The submission phase runs through September 29, and then we go into cleanup and sign off follows. So keep in mind during the submission phase, you're able to submit any student that you believe should be counted by the school district. However, when we move into cleanup phase, you can only submit students that do not create a conflict with another student. So you still do have the opportunity to add students, but if the student has already been claimed by another school, then you cannot submit that student. And we'll talk a little bit more about cleanup and sign off in a bit. The February 1st date is the spring count date. As of today, that's the way things stand. And this presentation focuses on what we know today based on recent changes by the State Board of Education. So right now, we plan to have a February 1st spring count date. We've outlined in membership that you'll submit February 1 to 10. Cleanup will be February 11 to 19, with sign off February 20 to 26. Both counts will be used for funding this year. Both counts are used to calculate basic grant funding, which consists of foundation, complexity, and ELL for the school corporation. Looking at the components of membership, nothing has changed this year with respect to the various types of students we're looking at. We'll go through each of these types a little quickly because nothing has changed, but there are 6 ADM types that you'll see in the layout. The first is resident enrollment. That's a student who has legal settlement in your school district. So they're enrolled and attending the same school corporation. It includes foreign exchange students. The one caveat we want to say is it excludes F1 visa students. F1 visa students that are attending a school district are expected to pay the full cost of their attendance at that school. And then homeless students are also reported as resident enrollment. And this is typically the ADM type that charter schools use for their students. Going on to transfers out. This is a student who has legal settlement in your school corporation, but is enrolled in attending another school corporation for one of the reasons that I've listed. Generally, I like to say that transfers out is for educational purposes. It's better accommodations for the student. Maybe a neighboring school district offers a series of courses that better serves the student's educational needs. So the student transfers out to that district, typically with an agreement between the school superintendents. Transfers out, when we look at transfers out, you can kind of zone in on Indiana Code 202611. That's where we see a lot written about the whole transfer situation and what school corporation might be responsible for any transfer tuition due for a student. But when you're reporting transfers out, instructional days and minutes are blank. This does not apply to a charter school, and the transfer out student is included in the ADM of the Corp of Legal Settlement. So even though the student left my district, I am reporting that student. Cash transfers. Cash transfers, you might have a student in a neighboring school district that wants to attend your school district. You have room, you can accommodate the student, so you allow the student to enroll in your district. You'll be counting the student. The cash transfer situation does or does not require that transfer tuition be paid by that family. It's optional for school districts. That started back in about 2013, I think, where it became optional. So you can accept the student. We just always advise school corporations to have a policy in place so they're treating all students consistently. State obligations, we don't typically hear too much about ADM Type 4. These are students that are state obligations. They're children of employees on state property. They may be children where no one is responsible for the students, so they're placed by an institution operated by a Division of Disability, Aging, Rehab, or Mental Health in a district. If there's transfer tuition due, it may typically be due from Department of Education. So we do receive some transfer tuition statements for state obligation students every year, but it's not too frequent. Placements in ADM Type 5. This is a situation where it's non-educationally related, why the student is placed in a particular district, whereas transfer out is typically associated with education and better accommodations. Placement in is not. So these are students, again, placed in a school district. There are various mechanisms for placing the student, but it does not apply to charter school students, and it's non-educational reasons. And this is also another type where you can go to Indiana Code 2026-11 again, the transfer tuition statute, and kind of see the various placements that are out there. And the student, in the case of placement in, is counted by the educating corp, and it can end up that the corp of legal settlement is responsible for any transferred tuition due, even though the corporation of legal settlement may not have been involved in discussions as to that student being placed in a particular district. And placements in does not apply to charter schools. The last scenario is dual enrollment. We had a change with dual enrollment this year through legislation in the spring. This is a student attending a non-public school inside or outside your school corporation boundaries. So what is different is before, if you had a student taking a couple of classes in your district, the student lived out of district, maybe going to a non-public school, and the student just wanted to take 1 or 2 classes, you were not able to count that student as dual enrolled because that student resided outside your district. Well, the law changed in the spring where it doesn't matter if the student is inside or outside your school district, the student can be considered dual enrolled as long as you're providing less than 50% of instruction to that student. So the funding for this particular student then is based on the full-time equivalency count. So the student is not counting as one for funding purposes, but something less than 0.5. For kindergarten, this is a year where the law changes a little bit again. Kindergarten entrance law is August 1 for a student to be age 5 and enroll in kindergarten. However, school districts can have a policy that allows a student to be waived into kindergarten if the student is age 4. You can waive any 4-year-old into kindergarten, but keep in mind the student has to be age 5 by October 1 for you to generate any funding for that student. Last year it was September 1, the year before it was August 1. So now we're up to October 1 for eligibility to be counted for membership. Kindergarten students participating in a full-day kindergarten program count as 1 for membership, and if not, they count as 1/2. The biggest issue I have when membership closes is that schools are improperly coding kindergarten students. So I would encourage you to double check how you're coding those students as yes or no, because if you count the kids as no for half-day kindergarten, they receive half the funding. But every year when membership completely closes, the first thing I do is look at what happened with kindergarten students. And there's typically a few districts that do not properly code kindergarten students. So pay attention to field 9. Something new for this year that Michelle's kind of alluded to where attendance is concerned is we have field 10 in place, which identified a student as virtual yes or virtual no. But our field 10 was updated this year to include COVID-19, C as in Charles. So looking at a virtual student, that's a student for whom of the instructional services that child receives, at least 50% is virtual in nature. That's a virtual student. The school has a virtual program, the school is a virtual charter school, or the school has a virtual school building. So those students are virtual. Non-virtual is a student who has less than 50%. Basically, they're a brick and mortar student. They're in the building. That's the method of instruction provided to that student. So that is not a virtual student. But what is new for this year is the COVID-19, the C student, which is a student who receives more than 50% of their instructional program in a virtual manner as a result of COVID-19. So had it not been for COVID-19, that student probably would have been in a brick and mortar school, or if it's a virtual charter student, still would be classified that way. But if not for COVID-19, that student would have had different instructional methods. So we do have 3 codes in field 10. Virtual yes, virtual 9, or virtual no, and then COVID-19. For students not included in membership, we typically are asked these questions quite a bit, so I decided to incorporate a slide. Students with legal settlement in another state, students enrolled in Indiana Blind or Indiana Deaf School. Those 2 entities report membership to us, so you'll create a conflict if you try to count them. Students or seniors finishing graduation requirements prior to October 1. Keep in mind, if you're reporting them for membership and then you turn around and try to report them as graduates in the fall, you've created a conflict between the 2 collections. So you're not to report students that have been determined to graduate in the prior year. Expelled general education students, adult secondary education students. Remember, there's an adult education program through charter schools. And the big one we're always asked about is students who graduate mid-year, and that affects period 2. So if you have mid-year graduates, you're no longer required to have them enrolled and expected to be in attendance for the February membership count. So we would not expect to see those students included. And then lastly, foreign exchange students with the F1 visa that I referenced back with membership. So for the membership changes with the virtual status codes, State Board of Education recently amended their rule on membership to provide us a little bit of guidance on how we review this classification of students. So what we're going to do internally is a series of daily checks during the sign-off period. So it is possible that a student is reported as virtual COVID-19 by your particular district, but at some point in time during cleanup, the student could end up being virtual or remain non-virtual. It'll depend on what happened with the previous ADM count, and that would be February of 2020. So in this very simple scenario, if a student was counted as virtual in the previous count, February of 2020, and is reported as virtual COVID-19 on the September 2020 ADM, this is a virtual student. To align with Board of Ed rule, we would move that student to being a virtual student. And what it does is it affects funding. So that student would generate 85% of foundation. So throughout the cleanup phase, we're going to be running a series of checks. But I think what we would ask of you is to report your students how they should report it at this particular time, and not try to read into this part until you're seeing results at a later time. So for membership changes associated with the cleanup phase, we released a memo a couple of weeks ago regarding this. But you can submit data to update existing records and add new records only if you don't create a conflict. We will reconcile your virtual data on a nightly basis during this phase to identify the virtual no's and virtual yeses. The information here tells you how you can go in and view what's happening with your membership records. So if you make changes in membership on the second day of cleanup, I would advise you to look at this process, after that, the next day or 2 days later. If you make a series of changes again during cleanup, then you need to revisit this as well. So if you are continually making changes during membership cleanup phase, you'll want to make sure you watch for the updates associated with that. And then we'll run one last update before sign off begins. So what's a little different this year is you will not be able to sign off during the cleanup phase, even if you have all conflicts resolved. We're holding everybody to sign off during the actual sign off phase to allow us to do the one last bit of reconciliation for the virtual situation. Schools are required to sign off once all students have been reported. You'll note that over the last several periods, DOE has been contacting schools that haven't signed the membership summary reports and uploaded them. Quite frankly, it's to your benefit to make sure you get that done. In the event of a State Board of Accounts audit, this is the first thing they're looking for from you. So it's a requirement that this information be signed off on. You'll go pull your ME summary report from the central office school building, and that is the one you use to sign off. Make sure you have the appropriate officials doing that. It will show the number of transfer out students not shown on the summary reports for individual buildings. So the process that's changed is on the front end, you're addressing the situation with Field 10 on COVID. On the back end, we are revisiting your data more than one time before cleanup closes to do a reconciliation of the virtual students reported in September as compared to February to determine whether or not they generate 85 or 100% in foundation funding. Because again, remember, this is the information that I use to determine funding for every school. So you'll download the central office summary report after all counts are verified, and you'll upload the signed information by October 16. We have the department's been reviewing the membership summary reports for accurate signatures. And as always, please make sure you maintain a copy of what is uploaded into the system for your records. And then I wanted to point out some supplemental material available for membership. This was the summer of change. You've got a lot of written guidance from the department as far as instructional time, residency, this recent update to fall 2020 counts, the enrollment guidance for kindergarten. So we have a lot of good information. Michelle and her team revisited the membership layout with me. These links are incorporated into that. So I think there's a whole host of information for you to look at as you submit membership information to the department. So that's the information that I have for membership. And we're just right around the window for moving into curriculum material data collection. So I just wanted to bring up a few things associated with that. Both student level and claim data must be submitted between October 1 and October 29. This is the most common issue that we have every year. Someone will follow up and say, well, I thought you just needed student level data, not claim data. Both pieces are due before the window closes. If you do not submit both pieces, you are not eligible for reimbursement. The curriculum materials is applicable to public schools, charter schools, and non-public schools. The sign-off phase for this year is October 30 to November 13. Additional data cannot be submitted during sign-off. So you need to make sure during that 29-day window that you have all of your information in, student level as well as claim data. Compare it to the prior year to make sure your numbers and costs seem consistent. And then distribution will occur in February. For curricular materials, if you're submitting student level data, you have to have a real-time record for the student, or the system will generate an error. All conflicts have to be resolved before you sign off on your curricular material summary report and upload it back into the system. And again, this is a report that is used by State Board of Accounts for audit purposes. So it's very important that schools submit timely and accurate data, because this will be one of the pieces of paper that they request to review as part of your curricular material process. So the next slide just provides you information on the upload summary report feature for curricular materials. So I won't go through it. It's in the textbook layout. But again, both pieces of data in by October 29, and the signed summary report must be uploaded by November 13 in order to be eligible for reimbursement. And then the last slide is just information for STN Help Desk, the textbook membership layouts. We have in the Moodle finance community a lot of information on textbook, including a memo, the FAQ, which was updated this summer, and a sample claim form if you want to complete it in advance of submitting actual online information. So with that, those are the updates from the Office of School Finance. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like we do have some questions in here, but I think they're a little bit all over the place, so they may or may not pretend. Let's see what we got here. As for the membership report, all of our students who are virtual are only virtual due to COVID-19, because otherwise they would be brick and mortar. And the student who has had surgery would have been considered homebound and would be getting services at home. If a student has had surgery due to COVID but is homebound due to surgery. I don't know what the question is. Oh, previous question. Oh, sorry. Where is that at? I'm a little unsure about that question there. Is there an expected date that issue with kindergarten students failing the ME submission due to H5 date cutoff during the submission phase, or will we resubmit those students during the cleanup phase? I don't know who that was for.
So,
Michelle?
Yeah, so support is aware of the concern with students that are age 5 by 10-1 failing, and that has been turned over to our development team. I do not currently have an ETA of when that issue will be corrected, but it will mean schools will need to resubmit the students that failed. And if it ends up being during the cleanup phase, just know that we will make sure, if those students do happen to create a conflict, we'll allow them to come in, so that that way both schools can clean up any of the conflicts. But yes, we are aware of this issue.
Right. Michelle, I spoke to our developer yesterday, and this is a priority that they are currently working on. So I think it'll be addressed sooner than later.
Okay, great.
how do we know if a student we received from another district was reported virtual on February 2020 count?
You will have to look at, there's a couple of things. You can look at the membership reported for last year on the student's STN and see the school number that reported the student. It's pretty evident if it's a virtual charter school that the student was virtual for last year. If it's not evident, they're going to have to reach out to the school and ask them why the student was reported as virtual, what kind of education, what program were they in last year.
Parent signs enroll papers at school on count day, but student is not participating in class until Monday. Student is present in class on count day at school. They plan to withdraw. Who claims the student?
Where the student was present and attending on count day. You cannot count a student that walks in your door on Friday, count day, but doesn't start classes till Monday. The school that was educating the student on Friday is the one that counts them.
And if I can add something, I think that goes back to the definition of enrolled and attending. The student was enrolled at the other school on Friday, but wasn't expected to be in attendance until the following week. Whereas the same student was enrolled and in attendance at the school Michelle referenced on Friday.
Our year-long virtual offering was due to COVID for parents to opt for virtual instead of coming in. We don't plan to continue virtual if COVID goes away. Should they all be C on the ME report?
I'm not sure I got the beginning of that, but if the school is currently offering virtual COVID instruction and that's what parents selected for membership purposes, if that's what they've been doing, those students that have been doing that should be classified as virtual COVID.
Is the C COVID related just to a sick student or virtual student due to COVID pandemic we are all dealing with?
The C code applies to a virtual COVID student. I don't know how else to elaborate, Michelle.
It doesn't matter if the student is sick, if the school is, if they are being taught virtually due to the pandemic, they are a C virtual student, a COVID student.
If we have a student who enrolled a few days prior to count day, and I think we've answered this one, and expected to be in attendance on count day, but did not show up for classes until after count day, should we count that student?
I would say that's a toss-up. I'll leave it up to the school whether or not they count the student because we don't know if the student was enrolled and attending somewhere else on count day. So if they feel they should count the student, they should, but it sounds like it could be a situation that could end up with a conflict. We don't know until we know the details of where the student was on count day.
One person said, when I submitted the ME, I received a warning for a student who was virtual with another school last year.
Correct. Those are warning messages. So prior to this change in statute with the state board, we had already put in place to help schools identify students that were reported as virtual last year. And like I said, this was all done and put in place prior to the change in statute where now we're running behind the scenes. So again, it's just a warning message, but this would give a heads up to the schools, students that possibly might change from virtual due to COVID to the virtual field and show the change in the funding from 100% to 85%. I understand that it's possible this is being pulled from September as well. And again, this was put in place before the statute said we're only looking at February, but it can give schools a heads up. It is just a warning message. It's not a fail. So that might help the schools identify those students that were reported as virtual last year.
If a student attended a virtual school last year, connections, etc., are they now with public school corp attending virtual due to COVID? Are they funded at 85%?
Yes, for a student that was at a virtual charter school last year and is now at a public school but attending virtual COVID, that student will be counted as virtual and funded at 85%. And that's one of the examples that'll be kind of determined during our reconciliation process during cleanup.
What about expelled special ed students? Are they counted on the ME, or do they not have an RT for the school year?
They are counted. Special education students expelled by statute, they still have to receive their free appropriate public education. They still have to receive their services, so they are counted.
And that can be found on page 15 of membership. We provided the exception for special ed kids.
All students submitted with the virtual COVID code will be 100% funded, correct?
No, we can't say that until we do our reconciliation process, because again, we have to look at the Board of Ed rule, go back, look at what was going on with each of these students in February of 20, and then make a determination. So I can't give an absolute answer to that.
Is there an ETA on when the membership for adults will be fixed? It's still not showing the file transfer page or input form.
I was just made aware of this during this meeting. So once I am off of the meeting, I will look into this and see what is going on. Melissa, were you aware of this before the meeting?
I was not aware of it until this question. So.
Yeah, I have a message from Selena Snelling, and I will look into this as soon as I am done with this meeting and find out what's going on.
So we got, if we have students who attended a virtual school last year, can we change those back to virtual COVID since we do not offer any virtual? Who do we call if they are changed, and if we're supposed to?
I'm not sure I understand that question. So maybe if you give us a call or something. If they were virtual last year, I'm not sure why you would go back and do something for last year. So.
Read the question again, Matt.
Sorry, yeah. We have students who attended a virtual school last year. Can we change those back to virtual COVID since we do not offer any virtual? Who do we call if they are changed and we're not supposed?
So the school shouldn't be changing anything. The school, there was no virtual due to COVID last year. There was no code C last year. So the school wouldn't be changing anything. And for this year, they need to be reporting the students accurately to what their education, how they're being educated this year. So if we don't want schools to change data to try to fit the state board's ruling, we want them to provide to us the accurate education platform they have now. And yes, there was no C code last year, so we wouldn't go back and change anything. And if I didn't answer the question accurately to what the person's asking, yes, please reach out to Melissa.
Can you clarify the 85%? If a student was virtual last year at Indiana Connections, but is COVID-19 this year at our public school?
Right. I mean, we have a matrix that was released as part of a memo. And if you follow the matrix, you'll see that if a student was at a virtual charter school last year and coded as virtual in February, and now a student is virtual due to COVID in September, that student will generate 85% funding. And that is the way it works to abide by the recently amended Board of Education rule for membership. So that's why we are, once you do your reporting, as Michelle said, based on what's actually going on with the student now, ignore the rest. Is the student virtual, non-virtual, or virtual due to COVID? Then that's when we come in during cleanup and do the comparison that we outlined in the matrix for you. So go back to the memo. There's a link to it in the slide about how the funding, and you'll be able to track what happens with your students.
And just so you know, we'll post the slide and send it out via email. We'll post it on the website too as well, the slide deck. So
Thank you.
So Matt, I'm looking at the questions coming in, and I wanted to make sure, did Nancy Mahoney's question get asked about the CP or answered? I'm sorry.
go ahead and read it, and then we can.
So Jennifer, I think this is going to be in your wheelhouse. It says special ed teacher teaches multiple grade levels. So those teachers that teach a 4-5 grade level will need 4 and 5 math classes, 4 and 5 reading, 4 and 5 science, 4 and 5 social studies, 4 and 5 ELA. Is this correct? And so what she's asking is each of those teachers would be reported with 4th grade and 5th grade and all of the subjects that they are teaching. Is this correct?
Yes. I mean, the short answer is that yes, we really want this information for the schools to, for the students to mean something. So it's a lot more meaningful if we see that they were actually in 4th grade math or 5th grade math, that type of thing. I realize that that short answer is not necessarily great for the teacher who then in your system may have, multiple different classes. But we really want to be able to track what the students have been doing and what they are responsible for. Does that help?
And I think, Matt, Vicky's question about the membership and the student who had surgery. So I'm going to take a stab at this, and Melissa, you can chime in. So they have a student that had surgery. This is not COVID related. So they are now homebound due to the surgery, learning virtually. So I previously said they would be reported on attendance as virtual. So for membership, she's saying that only the students who are learning virtual are being reported as virtual due to COVID because they don't offer a virtual program. The only reason they're offering virtual program is because of the pandemic. So she's saying the student who had surgery would be considered homebound and would be getting their services at home. This student for membership wouldn't be reported as virtual due to COVID. They're receiving their education virtually because of the surgery. Do you agree with that? And it would have to be more than 50% of their time. So I don't know how long this student is at home.
I guess, yeah. How was the student being provided educational services before surgery? Was this a virtual COVID student? And then if it was a virtual COVID student, I still see the student is continuing on to be virtual COVID. But if the student was in the classroom, and now is virtual due to the surgery, but going back to the classroom when that ends, then I could see that a little different. So I think we, kind of look up to and including count day, what was going on with that student, or has the student been out the entire semester for virtual instruction? So I think we need a little more detail.
You want her to put in a ticket or just reach out?
Just reach out in an email to me and then we can look at it, provide some detail.
We have all our kids coded C for virtual due to COVID. Will this show on the ME summary as C, or will the C's show as virtual, no on ME summary?
Correct. No on it. They will show as no on the ME summary, and that is spelled out on the membership layout. We did not add a column C to the membership summary.
But Michelle, for those kids that are virtual determined during cleanup,
right,
they'll show under the virtual yes column. So yeah, we only have a virtual yes and a virtual no column on the summary. So they'll feed in to one or the other column depending on where they were in February too. How they were coded in February.
I think what people are trying to ask is why did we get 85% for Johnny, who attended a virtual school last year but is attending our school virtually this year?
Because we're required to follow the state law and the administrative rule regarding membership. And so that is the way it plays out for this particular period.
If a student is 50% in class and 50% virtual due to COVID, how do we report the student on the EME report?
You're going to have to make a determination where that extra percentage lies. Where is the kid, 50.1 or 49.9, but you're going to have to make the call locally as far as how much of the instruction is in what method, and make a call and make sure you have supporting documentation to support, to reflect how the kid was provided services. That's going to be a local review process.
We have several students leave our traditional district to attend a virtual school. If they enroll with us in either this coming January or next August, will they get funded differently?
We can't answer that at this particular time. We don't know what next year's formula looks like. And so what we know is where we are today. So I can't answer next year's formula questions, unfortunately.
Okay, I don't think I see any more questions. So I think we're good to move on.
we're good to move on to the party of the show.
He better be on his top behavior. We want to see some really show today. We got to do something with COVID here.
Brandon, are you ready?
Are you muted, Brandon? Don't worry, I've been there too. Yeah. Did we lose you, Brandon? Uh-oh.
I hope we didn't lose him. I don't want to have to present his slides.
Hello?
There he is.
Sorry about that. I was on the wrong tab and I couldn't find the right tab. Got so many tabs. Okay, so it's time for the special education update. And I'm going to be extending a little bit on Melissa's topic. So I'm glad to hear that it's such a popular item because I have a little bit more on that. So what we're going to be talking about first today is exactly what Melissa was getting at, except for the special education implications, both to counting on membership, which she mentioned, and also to how you're going to report those students on the SE, where there is not any funding differences between virtual, but it does have some implications for the placement. Fortunately, though, not as many as a lot of people were afraid of. So as you can see on the slide that's up now, virtual education due to COVID-19 is going to be rarely, at least now anyway, a homebound placement, which is what a lot of people were worried about when this started. So we took a look at the virtual education guidance, which really kind of started out, I think, more along the lines of virtual charter schools or all virtual schools for what the placement would be, but you can use that and you can apply it to a situation where you have a school corporation that has some student or charter school that has some students that are virtual and some students that are in person. So the placement, remember, is the description of the services in that IEP. And then that placement determines the placement code, which is in most cases for the school age population, 50, 51, 52, up to 57. So usually if you are offering a virtual option now, obviously, or you're all virtual, that is not going to change the placement. It may have to change the specifics about how some of those services are described in the special education services part of the IEP, but it's not going to probably change the placement because you're doing that for all students, or you're at least giving all students that option. So you're not segregating a special education student because of his disability. It's being done for another reason that is also being applied for all other students. So we can get into some specifics, which I don't really want to, but when you get into like what that virtual education online looks like, but basically if everybody has the same opportunity, their code isn't going to change. It's still going to be a 50 because everybody's segregated now in a sense. If you're in a segregated classroom, normally in the building, a 52, you're still going to be a 52 because even though everybody's segregated now, you're not getting general education curriculum. So that's still a special education classroom. So it usually is not going to change, which should be good news for the data people and the special education administration in most cases. So just remember, if you're providing that opportunity to all students, whether or not all of them are using it, in most cases, rarely will it be a homebound placement. Now, I did hear one school, I think, said they were not offering a virtual option at this time. So, and we haven't had too many of those, but I know particularly in the more rural areas of the state, that is much more common. And even as we come out of this, which hopefully someday we will, I'm sure it won't be all at once. You know, even if there's a vaccine or something, it will be a rolling thing as we go back slowly and to full bore. So this may impact even more schools as we go forward that who decide, all right, this is the point where we're no longer going to offer a virtual option. At that time, the case conference committee can convene to determine if homebound is most appropriate. That can be for any reason. It can be due to the child's mental issues or medical issues or educational needs. Any of those reasons can determine that. And in that case, the placement would most likely be homebound unless you have a way to kind of tap that kid into the classroom that is going on there, which would be very difficult. So that would be a possibility where it wouldn't be a homebound placement. But in most cases, then that would in fact become a homebound because the case conference committee has placed the child there and you are segregating the child from the rest of the school population for a reason. Now, in that case, I believe, as Melissa said, that would not be that would be a homebound placement, and that would be one of the exceptions to the 85% in that case, I believe, as Melissa was saying. But haven't really thought that through all the way. But that is something that if someone has a question about, they can send us in an email. All right. Now we are seeing quite a bit of this as well, particularly with some students in the special education population. We have some schools who aren't offering the virtual option and the parents are saying, I don't want my kid going, I'm not doing this. Even more common, actually, is where they are using a virtual option, but the parent is saying, I don't want that virtual option. I'm going to homeschool until COVID is over. All right. So that is their option to do, just as it is at any time. That's not homebound, that's homeschool. And that is not a CCC decision. So they're coming off the ME, and until COVID is over, that is going to have to become a service plan, which is code 56, or for preschool code, well, no, wouldn't be allowed for preschool because there is no homeschool in preschool. So the student can be provided services under a service plan if that's feasible, and that would be the placement code 56, a service plan until we get back to the child being re-enrolled. That does have a lot of implications for proportionate share spending, not funding per se, but how that money is spent. And that would be more of a fiscal special education topic. That was discussed last week at the special ed WOW meeting. We have WOW meetings now. I forget what it stands for, but it's something impressive. And that started last week. And if you email me, I can send you the link to that discussion. Okay, so are there any questions on this? Because I said quite a bit on this one slide. There is the next slide has links to our guidance on this. There are scenarios on there, both for the LRE placement and the difference between homebound and homeschool. The slide with the Venn diagram on it, the pink, blue, and green circles shows these differences. Remember, homebound is not the same thing as homeschool. Homebound is something that the CCC decides, or a parent and a doctor together, right? When there's a medical reason that the child needs to be home, defined in Article 7 as temporary or chronic illness or injury. Homeschool is when there isn't one of those things, but the parent just says, I'm going to take care of my child's education. So those are different. And remember, and we have this on the HB layout, that medical homebound, a child can't, the IEP can place the child on homebound for medical reasons or for any other reason that is not medical. And that is what makes them either eligible or not for that $500 at the end of the school year, which we pay in the next fiscal year, actually, now under the current rules. But and so those can overlap, but they don't necessarily overlap. And remember also that your medical homebound students, and I know this is a tough topic this year because of the virtual education is not medical homebound, right? Because they're participating in the program as the school. It would have to be that they weren't participating in it and someone was being sent out, or they were being given a separate program. And once again, that's going to have some, I'm sure there'll be specific questions about that. But that is for all students, not just students with disabilities, that the medical homebound provision is in effect, but it will be not in effect for the vast majority of students that are at home because of COVID-19. So you can see right there the tributaries that can come down this river, where we could spend the whole day in the swamps of this topic. So I would advise you to read the OSC guidance on it, and if you have any questions on that or a scenario that's really not addressed there, please feel free to email me, and I will get it in touch with the special education team, because we've talked quite a bit about this over the last couple of months in particular. Remember, the rule of thumb is if all students are being moved to virtual, or if they're being given the choice, that's usually not going to change your placement. It's not going to make them homebound. But if not all students are, then you have to consider that. And finally, the parents always have the option to homeschool, which takes them off of the membership collection entirely, but still enables them to be eligible for service plan special education services. Okay, do we have any questions there on that? I know this is delayed a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like I don't know if this applies to you. What is senior rights? I have a principal saying no application is needed for a SR who lives in a different corp than the enrolled corp. Current ADM is 1, and I think it should be 3.
That goes back to Melissa. I don't.
Okay.
Or Michelle.
Yeah, senior rights is when a student lives in a particular school district, then the family moves away and the student can opt to finish the school year at the previous school he or she was at. So that's what senior rights are.
This is more of a specific question, but do we keep kids enrolled in Power School that are special education receiving services but homeschooled?
Well, if they're homeschooled, the recommendation is to keep them in Power School, but there usually is a way, and I don't know the details on this, to mark them as not enrolled. But if you don't have that way, then you would, for the time being, at least have to not report them on RT and not report them on ME. And only report them on SE. So if you usually do that manually, which is something that we don't recommend, particularly as we move into the data exchange realm, if you can't do that manually, then yes, you would have to take them out or inactivate them or whatever. I don't know if you want to add to that, Michelle.
Had to unmute. Nope, you're on it, Brandon. We are highly recommending, even if the student is not currently enrolled, but you're providing services to them, special education services. I don't know. There's going to be probably other instances that you house those students within your SIS. Moving into data exchange, like Brandon said, you need to be able to report those students to have access to their IEPs. You need to be able to report those students for special education funding. So the only way you're going to be able to get those in, there's no longer going to be an RTEM or RA record when it comes to data exchange. It's strictly what we are calling a student school association record. So you're associating the student to the school, and that is going to be an enrollment record. That is how you're going to have access to the IEPs. So you want to make sure that you have those students in your system, and it is my understanding, and I know that you're going to have breakout sessions later with each of your vendors, but it's my understanding that the vendors do have ways for you to house those students without them pulling for the other reports.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Going back to the previous one, which isn't really applying to you, it says, so going back to Kimberly's question, which was about the ADM count of 1 or 3. So is it a 1 or a 3? And her original question was about the senior rights. I have a principal saying no application is needed for SR who lives in a different corp than the enrolled corp. Current ADM is 1, and I think it should be 3. So is it supposed to be a 1 or a 3?
Do you know off the top of your head, Michelle? I'll have to look.
No, I don't. And honestly, I think it's going to be a determination from you, Melissa, because the school's going to receive the funding.
Right.
While she's looking that up, I'm going to expand a little bit more on this issue of not housing students in your SIS and reporting. With moving to data exchange, and the vendors are aware of this as well. And when I stated, I believe there's a way that the vendors are going to allow those students to be housed in the system without them reporting for certain reports. There's a new field that will be captured in data exchange to identify if a school, so it's a primary educating school, and it'll be a true and a false field. So these students, dual enrolled students, that's another one. Dual enrolled students, you don't currently report an enrollment record. Moving into data exchange, those students actually will be enrolled, reported as an enrollment and have a student school association record. However, one school will be marked as true because they're the primary educating school. The other school will be identified as false. So there is ways to show students that are homeschooled and coming for services, only students that are dual enrolled. There will be a way to identify those students and have them in your system. Sorry, go ahead, Melissa. I think she found it.
Yeah, senior rights are reported as resident attenders, and if you look at page 16 of the layout, it's referenced in there.
Another question, is there a difference between funding between ADM Code 1, resident enrollment, and 3, cash transfer?
There is not.
Ditto.
I don't see any more questions, so I think we can move on.
Okay, thank you, thank you. This is kind of one of these side effects of COVID, which of course are almost universally negative. But the positive is that ME is starting to approach SE in the complexity, and thus my colleagues are finding what life is like over here on the other side. So that is a positive development, at least. Okay, so you can see there are the amounts for this year for the special education funding. This is the state only. Remember, we do the federal funding, which is all a much different formula and a whole application process that is done completely within our office. That will come out. Well, those have already been submitted for this year, and then of course in the spring we'll do that again. But the severe disabilities have not changed. It's 9156, 2300 at the mild and moderate, and $500 at the language or speech impairment level. That's an add-on if it's a secondary disability, or it's just $500 if it's the primary. The preschool went up this year. That was a change from a couple of years ago, that it was a 2-year phase-in up to $3,000. Now remember that those amounts are contingent upon the budgeted amount, the numbers when we get the count after December, not exceeding what was budgeted in the last budget. That has nothing to do with COVID. It's always that way. The fact that there might not be enough revenue to cover that is a separate question, but those get automatically adjusted down. You might remember that was about to happen a couple of years ago. But they did a fix. So there is that note in there, but that's not directly related to COVID. That's just the budgeted amount, and that's always the case for that. The next slide, Melissa already discussed. So that's that change from back to October 1st for being those students that can start kindergarten with a waiver. The special education case conference committee usually decides whether a child starts preschool or not. Remember that we have allowed, if parents want to keep their kids back in preschool for another year, the case conference committee can support that and continue to provide those services. They will be funded under the 5B number regardless, because that's only based on age, but they can be kept back another year even if they are at kindergarten eligibility age. So this really doesn't affect that. It's just whatever is decided by the case conference committee gets put into this formula. Okay, this is what I talk about every single time, which is the age versus grade, preschool versus school age. So this is, as I said, the topic that I have decided that is the thing that I am going to get everybody to understand. So I bring it up every time. Remember that there are basically now 4 different classifications for this, which is unfortunate, but that's life. And we are working on a guidance document that will come out hopefully before I don't know when. Hopefully before Easter, at least. How about that? But put it out a little bit because everything is we're very busy right now. But we're working on a Q&A that will help with this and explain it in words what I have here in pictures. So if a child is in a PK program, remember that they are not eligible for tuition support. If they're in kindergarten, they are unless they're really young. You know what we just talked about. So that's that classification. Then there's the determination if they have a disability, and additionally, that whether they'll be funded at that $3,000 level, blanket level for everybody, or at the level that corresponds to their disability or disabilities, because of speech also, at the 5B through 22. So that determines the state special education funding eligibility. There's nothing you can do about that because it's pegged completely to age, and the child's age as of this time cannot be controlled, although I have not heard anything from Elon Musk lately on that, so maybe that he'll be able to change people's ages at some point, at least in the next 30 years, I don't know. All right, and then the last part of this is the federal rules. Okay, the federal rules used to be completely based on age for everything. So it was 3 to 5 for one and 6 to 21 for the other age, being ages. And of course, now at that situation changed because a lot of people very wisely, I think from a substantive point of view, said, well, it doesn't make sense for a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old that are in the same kindergarten classroom, which of course happens every year to, you know, hundreds of thousands of kids probably across the country, or at least thousands of kids to be coded exactly the same, to not be coded exactly the same on LRE placement. So they changed that, and we've been phasing that in. In April, you know, we allowed them to use both codes, but on this December 1, which is coming up, it will be here before we know it, you have to use the new coding rules, which means if the child is in kindergarten, and this is the purple circles, only the preschool child's, good God. Anyway, only the preschool children who are aged 3 to 5 will be available for that preschool codes. Those are 26 through 38. All right? They have to be in preschool if they are aged 3 to 5. If you have a 5-year-old on December 1, and there are many of them, of course, in Indiana that are 5 on December 1 and in kindergarten, they are going to go in that school age code. All right? We have made this change in Indiana IEP. We made it for everybody at least on July 1st. So if you have a kindergartner and you put who's 5 or 4 for that matter, and you put in code 26, let's say, it will fail this winter in the STN Center. Now, if it fails, because the IEP wasn't changed and you still have that in your SIS is reflecting on the IEP, you do not need another CCC to change that code on the IEP. So I know this is an area where, you know, the data people become the special ed administration, but I'm counting on you folks to tell your special ed directors, as we have, but you know, they probably listen to you more than me, to say that does not require a case conference committee. You can change it in Indiana IEP if you want to. I would let the parent know that you're making a change, but you're not changing the services. Remember, the code reflects the services, not the other way around. So this is not a change in services. You're doing exactly what was described before. It's just the code is not matching up with the new rules. So if you want to make a revision to the IEP, let the parent know, make a mark in there that you can. Even if you don't make that revision, which you can still report it differently on the STN Center, because if we did an audit, we would be able to see why that change was made. Remember, the services are described. If there was a complaint, the complaint investigator is going to look at those services. They're not going to be looking at the code and saying, oh, this child wasn't treated like a code 26 or a code 51. No, it's that individual services, and then that code just is a grouping so that we can do things with that data at a system level later. But this is an individual thing. So to recap, all kindergartners are now in the school age group. In all of our other IDEA, monitoring, and fiscal things, it has not changed. So this is what it makes more sense now because the LRE coding is more lined up with the program that the kid is in, but it's more complicated. All right, which we love in government agencies because it makes us have always something to do. Unfortunately, in the Department of Education government agency, we have an awful lot to do already. But it's all right. We can deal with it. But it does not affect anything else. And remember, IDEA only goes up to age 21. So that is for funding. In federal funding, only the students up to age 21. The 22-year-olds are only state funded. But we do apply those. Article 7 applies to the 22-year-olds in Indiana, and that is where most of the IDEA rules get shuttered out anyway. So that's a small thing where if you're wondering why it doesn't say 6 to 22 there, it's just because that the 22 only goes up to the state, so we can't give funding there, but all the provisions of Article 7 do apply to the 22-year-olds as well. All right, this is the cheat sheet, which I think explains it well, and also explains the fact that this change did not go in both directions. So the new environment coding slide. So if you have a 5-year-old in PK, that is what's the same as last year, preschool codes, or 4-year-old in pre-K, obviously. A 5-year-old in kindergarten, that is the change. That is now school age codes, whereas that used to be preschool codes. The 6-year-old in pre-K, this is something that you would think might have changed, but it didn't. If the child is 6, then they're going ahead to those school age codes, even if they're still in pre-K, which is the option of the parent. You know, in Indiana law, kindergarten isn't even required. So as a division, we want to make allowances for those parents to start the child later for whatever reason. And then sometimes the case conference committee as a whole might just say this child needs to be, has another year in preschool before they start kindergarten. That does not change. They still go ahead in the codes, all right? Probably because they didn't want to create an incentive for kids not to start kindergarten, which is always what the concern with this is. And so they're going to go ahead into those school age codes, and you'll have to apply those school age rules to the preschool situation. So that's why it doesn't go both ways. And then this last, of course, is not a change. If there was a 6-year-old in KG, they will still be using the school age codes, all right, which are the preschool codes and the school age. Okay, so this is a fun topic in a way. I think it will make our LRE data a lot better, a lot more useful for the kindergarten programs, but it's going to take a little bit of dexterity to make sure that we get this all coded. And I know some of you, through no fault of your own, are going to get those failure messages in December. So hopefully you will know how to deal with them, how to communicate with the special education directors. We tried to get Indiana IEP changed as quickly as we could, but this was announced last fall, finalized by the Office of Special Education Programs at the U.S. Department of Ed, and we couldn't get it all changed until the summer release. Okay, so do we have any questions on that? And then I'm almost done.
There's a question. How are the pre-K 3 through 5A reported? Is this a future release or current?
Okay, now that went back to the state. If you're asking about 3 to 5A, so remember 5A and 5B is not a federal designation. It's only the state, and it only has to do with the state money. 5A's get the preschool money. That means that they are turning 5 after August 1st. In this period right now, they're turning 5 right now as we sit here. The 5B's already turned 5. And they'll be, but both those groups will be 5 on December 1. So the preschool and the APC, the 5B through 22, are both reported on the SE. In law, those are 2 separate collections. In practice, they're 1. We just make the distinction based on the child's birth date. I don't know if that answers the question, because the 5A and the 5B have no federal equivalent. Well, they have, yeah, because it's 3 to 5 and 6 to 21 with this new kindergarten twist on LRE coding, placement coding. So I think if I got the question right, it's just, do preschoolers get reported separately? And no, they get reported on the same collection as everybody else. It's just we separate them out when we're doing the money. And that's always been that way, at least since 2009. When the
She said that
when
answered her
CODA.
question, so I think you're good.
Excellent, outstanding. I read it. I read the question right. Or I heard it right. Any other questions? I brought out all the teacher in me on this one, so I hope that I did a pretty good job, because it's one of these, this is like classic old math teacher, break it down, which they always seem to be able to do it after you broke it down, but then putting it back together, then not so much. So that's why I'm sitting here today and not in the class. Okay, so if nobody has any other questions.
I do not see any.
Is that it?
Yep, I don't see any.
Okay, so there's my contact info. That you can call me or email me. The Office of Special Education general line, which if you don't know where to come in on something, that's not a bad place to start. Somebody monitors that every day, and we get that ferreted out. I'm also happy to ferret things out, but the email load is, with this home working, it's just gotten really, really tough here in the last few weeks as school has gotten started. So I will do the best I can. But the other note is I am, for reasons that are welcome, although perhaps not understandable, someone has decided to marry me. And so I will be going on my honeymoon and 2 days off before the wedding starting next Thursday. So that's good for you folks to know, because I will not be available from October 1st until the 16th. Our honeymoon plans had to change because of COVID and everything, but I will probably not. I might sneak one like half hour here or there to try to cut down the email, but I'm going to try to stay away from this completely. But this is a critical time, so we will have on my auto replies, we will have like places you can call if the question can't wait until after I come back. So that is, I just wanted to mention that because it's in the very near future.
Nothing says romance like reading a few DOE emails.
Yeah, no, well, that's true. That's why I don't know. I'm not. This will not be played to my fiance. This webinar, I will not. But I'm expecting to have a lot of emails, and so when I come back. But hopefully, if we can get some couple other people, either in Michelle's office or in my office, to answer some of the questions that I know will be coming in right before RDA gets sent out. All right, thanks a lot for listening.
So Brandon, you took my thunder. I was going to tell everybody that you were going to be out and not to bother you. Let you enjoy your wedding, let you enjoy your honeymoon.
Yes, well, they're welcome to bother me as long as they can wait. That's.
You do not need to look at your email at all. You just enjoy yourself.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
That's easy for her to say. She doesn't have to come back and read your emails. So
that's why I'm just afraid of.
I get it. I'm right there with you.
300,
I don't know about on my honeymoon though, but I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Hey, I absolutely understand. I've done my 2-week vacation since and missed you guys. So you just.
Yeah, this is the first 2-week vacation. I've done a week before, but not 2 weeks. So it's very nerve-wracking.
In 2 weeks, Brandon, you're never going to want to take anything less.
Okay.
Just telling you. So Matt, there is another question I saw. Brenda pointed it out. Tammy Davis, I want to make sure that I answer this accurately. She had asked previously about keeping kids enrolled in Power School that are getting the special education services, but they're homeschooled. We discussed that. Then she asked about, do we run an RT once and then exclude and then give them a code 50 at the end of the year? So for current state with the application center, you need to be submitting an RA record. So if you're not familiar with an RA record, please go and look at the RA layout. It's very simple. And you can even do this through the input form if you just have a few students. Moving into data exchange, I would wait to receive instruction on how to submit those students through data exchange. And that's probably going to be working with your SIS vendor, which it looks like that's PowerSchool. So working with them on how the data will be entered in the system and extracted accurately to show you as the primary educating school of false, because their primary educating school is a homeschool. And I'm sure that they will be working with you to show you how to enter that information into the system.
I don't see any other questions coming in. I don't know if you see any more on your side. I do have a couple things. If anyone wants to view this, as soon as I hit stop live streaming, it then becomes a recording, and you can go right back to the link, and you can review this as much as you want. So if you want to see Michelle 500 times and listen to what she has to say and all the other crew, you can do that as many times as you want. Yeah. The other thing is, I'd like to thank the DOE and their team. I know a lot of people appreciate this. We had 242 people watching this. So there's quite a few people that are paying attention and need the help and want their questions asked. And I just thank you guys for doing that.
No, it's great to do it. And maybe this is our new way of holding these meetings. We're done at 11. Pizza hasn't arrived yet. It got cold.
Right. If you have nothing else, I think we're going to adjourn the meeting, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.